Welcome to the Midnight Codex, where forgotten truths breathe and shadows tell their tale. Tonight, don't blink and don't look behind you.
I have to mark this down. Maybe someone will believe me. But I don't think I have much time left. I can feel it. The weight of the words pressing down on me, like they were meant for someone else, but somehow I ended up with them. I need to make sure this is here. If not for me, then for someone else who might come after me before it's too late. And I can already tell. The clock's ticking. I don't know how long I've got left, but let me explain from the start. From when it all began. I wasn't always this way. Once I had a steady job, friends, a life that wasn't perfect but was enough. But that feels like another lifetime ago. Life has a way of kicking you when you're down, and that's exactly what happened to me. I was in my late 20s, stuck in a job I hated, my savings drained, and with every passing month, my rent was rising faster than I could keep up. Debt piled up. It wasn't just bills, it was a constant feeling of suffocation. I'd been let go from my last job, no severance, no cushion, just a pink slip. I'd applied for everything, tried every door, but nothing opened. It was like I was invisible. I knew I needed something, anything to pull me out of this mess. I needed money. Desperately. I didn't want to end up on the streets. And then that letter came. The envelope was nothing special, just a plain white piece of paper, unmarked. But when I held it in my hands, I could feel something strange about it. It was too neat, too deliberate, almost as if someone had taken extra care in writing it. It didn't feel like the usual junk mail or bills. I turned it over and found a dark red wax seal. It looked old and cold, like it had been there for years. At first I thought it was some scam, but then I thought about it and couldn't let it go. There was something about that seal, something that made me hesitate. I opened it. Dear Aaron, we have a position available for a night guard. The vault, located beneath the old St. Thomas Church, is in need of someone to oversee its security. The job offers generous compensation, well beyond what most in your situation could dream of. But before you consider accepting, understand this. There are rules that must be followed. Fail to follow them, and the consequences are severe. Please arrive at midnight tonight. You will understand when you get here. Sincerely, a trusted figure. I read it once, twice, 3 times. The words didn't make sense, yet they felt too real, too direct. Generous compensation, severe consequences. It sounded like a trap, a joke, or maybe some weird form of torture, but deep down, a part of me, the part that had nowhere to turn, saw the pay. More money than I'd ever seen in my life. I was skeptical, yes, but I was desperate too. I couldn't ignore it. I had no choice. St. Thomas Church was at the edge of town, half hidden behind the fog as if it didn't want to be found. The tall spires were nothing, more than crumbling stone, and the bell tower stood still, a hollow silhouette against the sky. The windows were dark, their stained glass fractured and forgotten. It didn't look like a place that anyone had visited for years. When I pulled up, I sat in my car for a moment. The silence outside felt unnatural. The air was cold, unnaturally cold, like it was coming from somewhere deeper. The church loomed before me, its presence heavy, unsettling. I almost turned around, but I needed the job. I needed the money. So I got out, locked the car, and walked to the doors. The doors creaked open with a sound that echoed through the empty space. Inside, the air was even colder. A thick layer of dust coated everything, the pews, the floors, the faded altar. The place looked abandoned, but the silence felt alive. I could feel it in my chest, the weight of it. And then I saw him. Father Elias. He stood there in the dim light, his figure tall and imposing, wrapped in a dark robe that dragged across the cold stone floor. His eyes, dark and piercing, didn't meet mine as he spoke. "You're the one they sent," he said, his voice deep but not unkind. I nodded, unsure of what else to do. His gaze felt like it could strip away everything. He motioned for me to follow, and I did. His footsteps were steady, unwavering, and the sound of them echoed off the stone walls. I kept my distance, trying to shake the feeling that something wasn't right. But I couldn't. Every step felt like it took me further away from the world I knew. The air was thick with something I couldn't place, something old, something waiting. Father Elias didn't say a word until we reached the door. He paused, looking at me over his shoulder, and handed me a piece of parchment. It was old, faded and worn at the edges, as though it had been folded and unfolded many times before. I took it without a word, almost afraid to ask what it was. When I opened it, I found 5 rules. Never open the vault after 10 p.m. Do not look at the clock after midnight. If the lights flicker, you must leave the room immediately. Never, under any circumstances, speak to the voices in the walls. If you hear footsteps behind you, ignore them, no matter what. The rules were simple, but as I read them, I felt a pit form in my stomach. Why such specifics? Why these exact instructions? And more importantly, why did it feel like the consequences were far more than just losing the job? Father Elias's gaze didn't waver as he watched me read them. "Follow these rules," he said, his voice lowering to a near whisper. "Do not break them. If you do, the consequences are severe." I nodded, feeling my throat tighten. He turned and began walking away. "You'll understand soon enough." The door to the vault creaked as he opened it, and as I stepped inside, a chill ran through me. The room was cold, too cold. The vault was dark, and the shadows seemed to stretch, unnaturally far. The silence here was different from the rest of the church. This was a silence that made the air heavy, oppressive. Father Elias gave me one last look before he closed the door behind him. A heavy thud echoed in the silence, and just like that, I was alone. As the door shut behind me, I knew deep down that there was no turning back. There was something about this place, something in the air. I felt it as I stood there. My first night had begun. And those rules, I couldn't shake them from my mind. I didn't know what was coming, but I knew that if I didn't follow them, there would be no escape. The story begins here. For now, I'll stay silent, but I don't know how much longer I can. There's something in that vault, something I wasn't meant to see, and now I'm stuck here, waiting, hoping that the rules can keep me safe, but I don't think they will. I'd barely taken my first steps into the vault when I realized something was wrong. The air inside was thick, almost too thick, like it was pressing down on me, trying to push me back, telling me not to go any further. The space felt old, ancient even. There was a heaviness to the walls, like they had seen things I wasn't supposed to see. The shadows stretched unnaturally long, and the only sound was the faint drip of water echoing through the silence. I stood still for a moment, absorbing the weight of the vault, but then the sound of footsteps broke my trance. Father Elias appeared in front of me, moving silently like a shadow in the dark. His robes flowed behind him, almost as if they had a life of their own. He didn't speak right away. Instead, his eyes swept over me, cold, calculating, like he was judging me, weighing whether I was worthy of the task ahead. Without a word, he handed me a piece of yellowed parchment. I took it, but the air around me felt heavier. My fingers trembled as I unfolded it. There were no pleasantries, just 5 rules. Never open the vault after 10 p.m. Do not look at the clock after midnight. If the lights flicker, you must leave the room immediately. Never, under any circumstances, speak to the voices in the walls. If you hear footsteps behind you, ignore them, no matter what. The rules were simple, too simple. But as my eyes scanned the words, I felt something deeper, something heavy. A chill ran down my spine. I looked up from the paper and saw Father Elias standing there, his face unreadable. "You understand the rules," he said quietly, his voice low and stern. It wasn't a question. I nodded, though a part of me felt like I wasn't meant to understand them fully. I wasn't supposed to ask why, only to obey. But that was the thing. The rules felt absurd. Who would ever open a vault at 10 p.m.? Who would look at the clock after midnight? And voices in the walls? That was pure superstition. But then, Why had Father Elias said it like that? Why did his eyes not blink when he spoke? Why did he sound so afraid? It made no sense. I stood there, the rules burning in my hand. I glanced around the vault, the shelves lined with dust-covered books, the relics, old and crumbling, seemed to watch me, their silent, judging presence pressing down. The shadows shifted as if they were alive, and the silence was deafening. But I couldn't shake the rules. They kept running through my mind like a loop. I tried to push them away, to dismiss them as paranoia. But something in my gut told me they weren't just words on paper. They were something else. Something darker. The night crept on, and I began my first round of patrol. The vault stretched endlessly before me. But as I walked the perimeter, every time my footfall echoed in the emptiness, I couldn't shake the sensation that something was wrong, something I wasn't seeing. I started thinking about the first rule. Never open the vault after 10 p.m. It seemed so trivial. Just a simple instruction, right? But why had Father Elias said it like it was the most important rule of all? Why had he stressed it with such gravity? I found myself looking at the clock on the wall, a grand old piece that ticked louder than any clock I'd ever heard. The hands slowly moved toward 10 p.m. The seconds dragged by. My heart pounded in my chest. I was so lost in thought that I didn't even notice the lights flicker. The dim lights overhead buzzed once, twice, then they went out completely. For a split second, there was only darkness. My breath caught in my throat and my heart skipped a beat. Then, the lights flickered back on. But something had changed. The shadows were longer, deeper, like they had moved in the brief moment of darkness. I stood still, feeling the weight of it. The air felt colder. The walls, they felt closer somehow. I remembered the second rule. Do not look at the clock after midnight. I hadn't even realized it was past midnight. I glanced at the clock, 12:03 a.m. The hands on the clock seemed to blur for a moment. The second hand jerked, skipping a beat as if time itself was malfunctioning. I pulled my gaze away, my heart racing in my chest. I hadn't broken the rule. I hadn't looked at the clock after midnight. I'd only glanced at it, just a quick look. But what did it mean? Why couldn't I look at the clock? The third rule came back to me, just as I was starting to regain my composure. If the lights flicker, you must leave the room immediately. I should leave. I should walk out of the vault right now, go back to the safety of the front door. But my feet were rooted to the floor. I couldn't move. Then, I heard it. A faint sound, almost imperceptible. A whisper. At first, I thought it was just my imagination. But the longer I stood there, the clearer it became. It wasn't just a whisper. It was a voice. A soft, low voice, calling my name. I couldn't understand what it was saying, but it was unmistakable. The voice was coming from the walls. My body froze. I wanted to scream, but the sound was stuck in my throat. I couldn't breathe. Then I remembered the fourth rule. Never, under any circumstances, speak to the voices in the walls. I didn't even want to look at the walls, but I couldn't help it. I turned my head slowly, my eyes scanning the room. There was nothing there, just the same shelves, the same dust, the same shadows. But the voice, it didn't stop. It whispered again. My pulse hammered in my ears. I could hear it. The voice was real, and it wanted something from me. The fifth rule echoed in my mind. If you hear footsteps behind you, ignore them, no matter what. I turned slowly, my heart in my throat. The vault felt like it was closing in on me. The space seemed to grow smaller, and there they were. Footsteps, software shuffling behind me. I spun around, but again, there was nothing. I heard the footsteps again, louder now, closer, and then, just like that, they stopped. I stood frozen, my breath shallow, my mind spinning. I realized I'd broken the rules, all of them. I hadn't opened the vault, but I had looked at the clock. I had listened to the voices in the walls. I had heard the footsteps, and I couldn't ignore them. What would happen now? I stayed there for what felt like hours, but when I finally pulled myself together, I realized one thing. The vault wasn't just a place to guard. It was something else. something far worse. The rules weren't just guidelines, they were barriers. Barriers keeping something in. And now that I had broken them, I wasn't sure how much longer I'd have before whatever was trapped inside would come for me. I don't know if I can make it through this night. I don't know what will happen next, but I have to keep moving. Because if I stop, I know it will find me. The vault felt like it was suffocating me. The air was thick, almost too thick to breathe. The old stone walls seemed to close in, pressing down with an unrelenting weight, and the silence hung like a heavy fog around me. The only sounds were my footsteps, echoing in the cavernous space, and the rhythmic ticking of the grandfather clock. I tried to stay calm, keep my mind sharp. The first night was supposed to be uneventful, but as I sat in the dim light, the hours stretched on like they had no end. The vault felt like it had no beginning or end either, just a space locked in time where nothing ever really changed. 10 p.m. The clock on the wall ticked its way to the hour. The quiet was almost unnerving. Every time the second hand swept past, it felt like it was marking some kind of invisible boundary, one I couldn't see but could feel. The vault was watching me, waiting for me to slip. I couldn't explain it, but every inch of the room felt alive. It was as though the vault itself was aware of my presence, as if it were studying me. The shelves, heavy with ancient relics, stood, like silent sentinels. The flickering light above did little to push back the shadows, leaving corners that seemed to stretch endlessly, swallowing everything in their path. But I pushed the feeling aside. I was just being paranoid. I had to focus. The night crept on, slowly, silently. 11:50 p.m. I checked the time again, trying to keep track of every second. I was doing laps around the room, scanning the shelves. The strange energy of the place weighed on me, but I shook it off. This was just a job. I just had to keep myself busy, keep my mind sharp. Then I heard it. A faint whisper, barely audible. It wasn't the kind of noise that could be explained away. It was too real, too close. I froze. It came again, just a breath, a sound that barely made it past the thick air, but I heard it, and it was unmistakable. Someone was here. I wasn't alone. My heart pounded in my chest. I knew I shouldn't react. I remembered the rules, the voice of Father Elias echoing in my mind. Never speak to the voices in the walls. But the whispers, they were getting clearer. They were coming from inside the vault. The walls seemed to hum with a strange energy. I turned slowly, my eyes scanning the shadows, searching for something, anything. I had to keep it together. I had to focus. Midnight. The clock struck the hour, its chimes reverberating through the room. The moment the bell sounded, the lights flickered. Once, twice. I froze. This wasn't a glitch. The lights flickered again, and this time, they didn't return to their normal glow. The shadows deepened, and the air became colder, heavier. I could feel something shifting, something just out of reach. I glanced at the clock again. 12 a.m. The second hand was frozen. The time had stopped, and with it, something else in the room shifted. I could feel it in my bones. I didn't know what was happening, but I felt it, a presence in the room that wasn't there before. I turned back to the shelves, my hand gripping the edge of a dusty book. I tried to calm myself. This was all in my head. This wasn't real. And then, I saw it. A figure. Just a flicker at first, something that barely caught my eye. But then it was there, standing in the corner, pale, wraith-like, its hollow eyes staring into mine. I jerked my head towards it, my heart leaping in my chest. But when I turned fully, the figure was gone. There was nothing. Just the shadows, stretching unnaturally long, filling the empty space. I shook my head. It had to have been my imagination. But then, I heard it again. The whisper. Louder this time. Aaron. I snapped my head toward the wall. The voice was coming from inside the stone, seeping through the cracks, the gaps. It was calling my name. My stomach churned. I couldn't let it in. I couldn't let it affect me. But the voice was persistent, and my pulse quickened. The longer I stood there, the closer it felt. The air grew heavier, like the room itself was pressing against me. I remembered the rules. The fourth rule: never, under any circumstances, speak to the voices in the walls. I knew I shouldn't do it, but I couldn't stop myself. It was like I was being pulled toward it, the whispers wrapped around my mind, pushing me toward something I wasn't ready for. I took a deep breath. "Who's there?" I whispered into the dark. The room went dead silent. My own voice seemed to linger in the air longer than it should have. And then, it happened. The floor began to shake beneath me. The rumble was faint at first, like a soft hum in the ground, but it grew stronger. The walls trembled as if the very foundation of the vault was being tested. The humming intensified, and with it, the lights above me flickered wildly. The shadows began to twist, bending at impossible angles. I took a step back, but the tremors increased, and I couldn't keep my balance. Everything around me shifted, like the vault was changing, breathing. I heard footsteps behind me. I whipped around, my breath caught in my throat, but again, there was nothing. Just darkness. Just silence. I could still feel it. The footsteps were real. I knew they were real. But when I turned, there was no one there. I realized then what I had done. I had spoken to the voices. I had broken the rule. And now everything was different. The floor shook again, harder this time. The walls seemed to close in on me, and the vault began to hum, the sound growing deeper, louder, vibrating through my chest. The air felt thick, suffocating. The whispers weren't whispers anymore. They were voices calling from every corner of the vault, and they were getting closer. I backed up, but the space around me felt smaller. The shadows seemed to stretch, grow, swallowing me whole. I was trapped. And then, in the corner of my eye, I saw it again. The figure. It wasn't just standing there anymore. It was moving. It was coming closer. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. The walls were closing in. And then, just as suddenly as it started, everything went still. The shaking stopped. The lights returned to their dull flicker. The whispers faded into nothing. I was alone again. But I knew I wasn't. Something had changed, and now I couldn't escape. I don't know how much longer I can stay here. The vault is alive and it's watching me. It's waiting for me to break the rules again. I don't know what will happen if I do, but I'm beginning to think the vault isn't just holding secrets. It's holding something much worse, something that wants to be set free. And I think I've just unlocked the door. The second night in the vault felt different. There was an oppressive weight to the silence, a heaviness that seemed to press down on me from all sides. The walls were closing in, but not in a physical sense. It was something deeper, more psychological. I tried to keep my focus on the task at hand, checking the shelves, watching the clock, but the air itself felt thick, almost suffocating. I knew the vault had its rules, but they felt even more present tonight. They were no longer just warnings. They felt like invisible chains wrapped around me, pulling tighter the longer I stayed. The whispers began again, soft at first, like distant murmurs just beyond hearing. But soon, they were undeniable. Aaron! I couldn't tell where they were coming from. The walls, the air, or was it just my mind, slowly unraveling after days of isolation? I told myself it was nothing, just my imagination playing tricks on me. But the whispers, they were too clear, too real. I turned toward the vault, my body moving on its own as if drawn by an invisible force. My fingers reached out, trembling as they hovered over the ancient lock. The voices were growing louder now, more urgent. "Open it! Release us!" I recoiled. I had read the rules. I had memorized them. Never open the vault after 10 p.m. I wasn't supposed to listen to these voices, and certainly not respond to them. But something was pulling me in, something powerful. My hand twitched, aching to obey. I pulled away. I remembered the consequences, the tremors that shook the vault when I had violated the rules before. I couldn't risk it. Not again. But the whispers continued, louder now, a chorus of voices begging, pleading. "Open it! Let us free!" I stood frozen, my heartbeat thundering in my chest. The vault seemed to pulse with a life of its own, its walls creaking, groaning under some unseen weight. It wasn't just a vault anymore. It was alive. It had always been alive, and now it was calling to me. I glanced at the clock. 11:15 p.m. The second hand moved erratically. I blinked, staring at it. It didn't make sense. The clock was malfunctioning. It had been running fine when I first entered, but now it was ticking in uneven intervals, its hands jerking back and forth like it couldn't decide what time it was. The very concept of time was slipping away, twisting and warping as if reality itself were being unraveled. The vault's pulse grew stronger, its beat almost synchronized with my own heart. The air thickened, pressing down on me, suffocating me. I could feel the presence in the room, the weight of something that was no longer contained, no longer hidden. The whispers intensified. Open it. Let us out. Release us. I felt myself moving toward the lock again. My fingers trembled, but I didn't stop them. I had to know. And then I reached for it. My hand hovered over the lock, the cold metal sending a shock through my fingers. I hesitated for a split second, but the voice in my head screamed at me to act. It was louder now, more desperate. The vault's pulse was deafening, vibrating through my bones. It wanted to be opened. The moment I twisted the key, the room shook. I felt it. The vault was alive. The entire structure groaned, under some unseen pressure, as if something deep within was waking up, stretching after centuries of slumber. I stepped back instinctively, but it was too late. The vault door creaked open, inch by inch, as though reluctant to reveal its secrets. What I saw, what I felt, was unlike anything I could have imagined. At first, it seemed like nothing had changed. The shelves were still lined with old relics, the air still heavy with dust. But there was something off. A faint glow emitted from the cracks of the vault, illuminating the dark room in a sickly, unnatural light. The temperature plummeted, and the cold air settled like a weight around me. I could hear the voices again. But now they were more than just whispers. They were demands, not pleading anymore, but commanding. "Open it! Release us!" I stepped closer, my mind racing. What was I doing? What had I done? But I couldn't stop myself. The vault door was halfway open now, and I could feel something dark, waiting behind it. I took another step forward, my breath catching in my throat as the temperature continued to drop. And then I saw them. The figures. They were like shadows at first, shapes that didn't belong, flickering in the light. But as I took another step closer, the figures became clearer. Human forms, distorted, their faces frozen in agony. Their eyes were wide, unblinking, and they were staring directly at me. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Their gaze was enough to send a chill straight through my spine. I stumbled backward, my mind racing as I tried to make sense of what I was seeing. But it was no use. There was no logical explanation for what lay before me. I had opened the vault, and now I was face to face with the consequences. The figures in the vault began to move. Slowly at first, like they were awakening from a long, terrible slumber. But then the movement grew faster. The air around me grew colder still, until I could see my breath in front of me. The room was no longer just a room. It was a prison for them. But now I was a part of it. I could feel it, the weight of their gaze, the pull of their presence, as if they were drawing me in, trying to reach out to me. The air crackled with something dark, something ancient. And as I looked deeper into the vault, I saw the truth. This was no ordinary vault. It wasn't just a storage space for relics and old artifacts. It was a prison for the damned. The figures were not just trapped here, they were bound, trapped by something far more powerful than I could understand. And now I had released them. I tried to slam the door shut to lock it back into place, but it was futile. The vault door was no longer responding to my attempts. It groaned in protest as though it were being pulled open by an unseen force. The figures inside were moving faster now, writhing and reaching out, their faces contorted in desperate agony. The temperature continued to drop, the air around me growing colder and colder until it felt as though the very life was being sucked from the room. I wanted to run, I wanted to escape, but I knew, deep down, there was no escape. I had broken the rules, And now I was paying the price. The vault wasn't just a prison for them. It was a prison for me now, and I was trapped. The air in the vault was suffocating, the weight of it pressed against my chest, as though the very walls were closing in on me. But it wasn't just the physical space, no. It was the presence, the unrelenting pull of something ancient, something malevolent. The air grew thicker with every breath, as if the vault itself were breathing, alive with dark energy. The vault was no longer just a room, it was a prison for them. And I had broken the one thing that had kept them locked away. The truth hit me like a hammer. This was the ritual. The vault was never just a storage space, it was a containment, a holding cell. The church's founders hadn't just sealed away relics or forgotten books. They had trapped an ancient force, a darkness so powerful that it could bend reality itself. And now, it was free. The figures inside the vault shifted, flickering in and out of view like shadows cast by a dying fire. They were not human. They weren't even alive, not in any way I understood. Their faces were twisted, contorted in agony, their hollow eyes locked on me, unblinking, as though they were watching me with a hunger that felt unnatural. They were the prisoners of this place. But now, I had released them. The vault's door groaned under my hand as I tried to push it closed, but it wouldn't budge. It was like the door itself was alive, resisting me, refusing to be locked again. The figures within the vault began to stir, their movements slow at first, but then faster, more frantic. The shadows stretched longer, curling toward me, pulling me into their grasp. I could feel the air grow colder, the temperature dropping to an impossible low, seeping deep into my bones. I could hear them now, no longer whispers, but a chorus of voices, demanding, "Release us. Open it. Set us free." I stumbled back, my pulse racing in my throat. The reality of what I had done was settling in. This wasn't just about breaking the rules anymore. This was about unleashing something far worse than I had imagined. The voices, once whispers, now commanded me. The vault wasn't just a container for their souls. It was the vessel of a dark ritual, one that had been in place for centuries. And now that I had broken the seal, the ritual was beginning. The vault began to pulse. I could feel it in the air, vibrating through the very walls. The cold grew more intense, like the very essence of life was being drained from the room. It wasn't just the vault that was alive. It was everything. The room was becoming part of the ritual. The walls groaned, the shadows moved, and the floor beneath me trembled, as though the entire structure was shifting, changing. And then the pulse, a deep, resonant thrum, began to sync with my heartbeat. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. The vault was no longer a space I could understand. It was a living thing, and I was a part of it now. I could feel its pull, its hunger. The walls seemed to close in on me, the shadows curling around my legs, my arms, pulling me toward the center. I could feel something ancient and powerful pushing against me, as though the vault itself was drawing me in, demanding that I join it. I tried to turn, tried to run, but my feet were rooted to the spot. The vault's pulse grew stronger, the air thicker. The voices, no longer whispers, began chanting in unison. "Release us. Free us." The temperature dropped further. I could see my breath now, a cloud of mist with every exhale. The cold wasn't just in the air, it was in my skin, my bones. It was everywhere. I glanced back at the vault door, half closed now, and I could see the figures inside moving faster, their limbs stretching toward me. Their faces, distorted in agony, seemed to be caught between realms, alive yet trapped in eternal suffering. It hit me then. These weren't just souls. These weren't just spirits locked in a cage. They were something far worse, something that had been locked away because it could never be set free. These figures, these tortured beings, were the vessel for something greater, something older. And by breaking the final seal, I had released it. The vault was no longer just a prison for them. It was a prison for me. I turned back to the vault, my fingers shaking as I reached for the door. It wouldn't close. The metal was ice cold beneath my touch, but I couldn't make it move. The vault was no longer a structure of stone and metal. It was alive. I felt it. The pulse of dark energy throbbed beneath my feet, rising, vibrating through the floorboards. The very foundations of the church felt as though they were buckling under the weight of something other. And then I saw it. A figure in the corner of my eye. A flicker of movement. At first I thought it was just my imagination, but then it came into focus. A pale, wraith-like shape standing in the corner, its hollow eyes staring directly at me. Its face twisted in silent scream, its skin stretched taut over bone. And then, more figures, emerging from the shadows, their eyes locked onto mine, unblinking, silent, terrifying. I tried to back away, but I couldn't. I was paralyzed. The vault's pulse was deafening, the air humming with an energy I couldn't control. And the voices, they were no longer pleading, they were commanding. They wanted out. Let us free. And I had opened the door. The temperature continued to drop, colder and colder, until I could feel the ice crawling through my veins. I could see the figures now, faces twisted in agony, trapped between realms. They reached out, toward me, their fingers clawing through the air, pulling me in. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. They were everywhere. And then, suddenly, the vault door slammed shut. I staggered backward, gasping for air. The pulse of energy had stopped. The cold eased, but the silence felt heavier than ever. The figures inside the vault had stopped moving, but the space itself felt different. It wasn't just the physical vault that was alive. The ritual had begun. The floor beneath me cracked with a deafening sound. The air trembled as though the world itself was being torn apart, ripped at the seams. And I knew, deep down, that there was no going back, no undoing what I had done. I had released something ancient, something far more powerful than I could comprehend. And now, it was free. I don't know how long I've been standing here. The vault is alive, and I'm part of it now. The ritual isn't just in the vault anymore. It's in me. And soon, the world will feel its wrath. I don't think I can make it through the night. I don't know how long it's been. Time no longer makes sense. The clocks, the days, they've all become a blur. The cold is constant, suffocating. The decay, it's relentless, eating away at my body, my very soul. But I don't die. I can't die. At first, I thought it was just exhaustion, the numbness in my fingers, the tightness in my chest. It was easy to write it off. But then, I saw my hands. My hands. They were starting to crumble, like old parchment, the skin peeling away in thin, fragile layers. I reached for the closest reflection, a shard of broken glass, and the face that stared back at me wasn't mine anymore. Hollowed cheeks, eyes so sunken they looked like black pits, my face disfigured, as if time had carved its mark deep into me. My skin was stretched thin, dry, cracking. It wasn't just my body that was decaying. I could feel it in my soul. I had opened the vault, and now it had me. The whispers began again, louder now, sharper, more insistent. They echo in my mind, gnawing at me, reminding me of my failure, of the rules I ignored. I can still hear Father Elias's voice, low and grave, warning me about the consequences. But I didn't listen. I thought I could handle it. I thought I was different. Now I know better. I tried to scream. I tried to cry out, but the sound didn't reach anyone. The walls, the very vault itself, stifled my voice. My throat was dry, parched from the effort. I could feel the echo of my screams inside the stone, bouncing off the cold, damp walls. But no one would ever hear me. Not now, not ever. The vault is my prison. It's always been my prison. But it's more than that. The vault is alive. I can't escape it. I can't even leave this room. The air is so thick now, so oppressive. It feels like it's pressing in on me, suffocating me. The temperature has dropped even further, but it's not just the cold. It's something deeper. Something in the very fabric of the vault, seeping into me, draining me. My body is falling apart, but I'm still here, trapped. The voices, they won't stop. They keep getting louder, and now they sound like me. My own voice calling out, pleading for release. But it's not me anymore. not the man I was before. The walls are closing in on me. I feel it, feel them watching me, even when I close my eyes. The shadows are no longer just shadows, they are alive. They stretch toward me, swirling in the corners of my vision, waiting for me to slip, to break. I can feel the weight of them pressing down on me. The vault was never just a place to guard, it was a trap. And now, I'm part of it. The whispers are part of me now too. I've become one with this cursed place, and I don't know if I can ever escape. I've seen it happen before. I've watched others walk through that same door, read that same letter, broken the rules, just like I did. And they too were swallowed whole by this place. They've become part of the cycle, just like me. I tried to escape. I tried to run, but my feet couldn't move. I'm not sure if it's my body failing me, or if the vault is holding me in place, locking me in. The vault? No, the curse is stronger than anything I can comprehend. It was always stronger. I reached for the door, my hand trembling. But the door didn't open. It didn't even budge. The vault resisted me, as if it were alive, as if it could feel me trying to escape. But I'm not going anywhere. I've seen the others. They all tried to leave. They all tried to escape this prison. But now, I'm one of them. A prisoner. A part of the curse. The shadows in the room are growing longer, stretching out toward me, as though they're waiting for something. The vault is watching. It's always watching. The pulse of the room is in time with my heartbeat, and it's suffocating me, pulling me deeper into the darkness. I can hear the other souls now, the ones who came before me. They're speaking, but I don't understand them anymore. Their words are distorted, blending into the whispers that haunt my mind. Release us. Open the door. You're one of us now. The cycle continues. It always does. I can feel it now, the weight of it all, the endless suffocating darkness. The vault isn't just a room, it's an entity, a living, breathing thing that consumes everything in its path. And I'm no exception. I've become part of it, bound to it forever. My body is decaying, my soul is trapped, and there's nothing left to do but wait. I see it in the shadows now, the next fool. The next person who will read the letter, ignore the rules, and walk into the vault. I know how this ends. It always ends the same way. The vault will claim them, just as it claimed me. I don't know what will happen next. I don't know how much longer I can bear it. But I do know one thing. I am watching over the vault now. The rules are mine to follow. The rules I once ignored. I'm part of the curse now, just like those before me. And when the next fool arrives, they will take my place. The cycle will begin again. The darkness has claimed me. And it's only a matter of time before it claims someone else.